Hello everyone, I'm a storyteller and today I'm here to help you. I know you use this video to fall asleep, but are you sure you want to fall asleep on this dark night, a night where nothing can protect you from things you can't see? Before continuing, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to always follow stories that can make you feel scared but also discover a part of yourself. Now, I want you to try to imagine something. Where are you from and what time are you watching this video? Each neighborhood, each house, each night has a different feeling. You may have never felt it, but there are nights, dreams, you will never forget. Let's start this story with me. Now, relax, turn off the lights and let the night air envelop you. Tonight, the atmosphere seems different. Can you feel it? It felt like something was heavier than usual, like the whole world was weighing on me. The only light from the porch light, dimly, illuminated the old wooden panels in front of the house, creating distorted, strange shadows across the yard. And I can feel a presence, something invisible. If I just turn away, it will wait for me, will catch me off guard. My heart was pounding. I can't explain this feeling. I live in a modest house in a quiet suburb, where nothing makes me feel uneasy. This neighborhood, although simple, is a peaceful place. There is a strip of green grass, surrounded by a fence, nothing for me to worry about. But that night, everything changed. I don't know what made me feel unsafe. And then I heard footsteps. The steps were slow, each step seemed to intentionally create that sound. Slowly, steadily, as if someone were walking the wooden planks of the porch in the middle of the night. All the peaceful feelings I had felt for so long immediately disappeared, giving way to anxiety. I woke up in the middle of the night, not knowing the time. The house was in darkness, and the only light was faintly from the street lamps, filtering through the curtains. I felt like something was wrong at that moment. My heart was pounding, but I didn't dare move. Any movement can be a sign of approaching danger. Then I heard it, footsteps, but closer this time, right next to my door. My heart clenched, as if someone was standing there, outside, watching me. Everything seemed to stop, the space became terrifyingly silent. Could it be just my imagination? I can't be sure. Somehow, I began to vaguely hear a voice, faint, barely recognizable. Is there someone standing out there? Or is it just a product of a midnight imagination? My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking as I turned on the light in the living room. A feeling of anticipation, as if hoping to see someone, but no, just my own reflection, pale and trembling. I tried to control my fear and continued walking towards the door. I definitely have to re-examine this situation, to clarify whether anything happened or not. So I turned the lock and pulled the door wide open. Empty night. Cool air rushed over me, but the cold feeling didn't come from that air. The light on the porch was flickering and weak, creating dim shadows across the yard. Those shadows were like strange, undulating shapes, as if someone was watching me from the darkness. My eyes quickly scanned the yard area, but just for a moment, my stomach tightened. A vague figure stood near the sidewalk. That wasn't a normal person standing there. Rather, it was like a large, shadowy creature that seemed to be looking right at me. An indescribable feeling welled up inside me. The distance and the dim light made it impossible for me to clearly recognize the figure's face. But its posture makes me feel uneasy. It stood there, terrifyingly still, as if it knew I was watching. I quickly reached for the light switch to illuminate the path, hoping that the strong light would dispel the strange feeling. But as soon as the light turned on, the figure disappeared. The ground was silent. Only the bushes swayed gently, even though there was no wind blowing. I stood there, my hand still shaking on the light switch, as if hoping that if I looked again, it would all be an illusion. But no, that's still true. That's the beginning. The next day, I tried to calm my fears by telling a friend on the phone. I tried to laugh, saying that maybe it was just someone passing by or maybe it was just a play of the imagination, a combination of dreaming and waking. But part of me, deep inside, knew that wasn't the case. Something was watching me from the darkness, and although I couldn't see it clearly, I felt its presence. That feeling cannot be wrong. The following nights, my sleep became erratic. Familiar sounds became strange noises that I couldn't explain. The creaking sound of old wooden planks made me shiver in fear. Many times, I jumped out of bed, eyes wide open, hands clutching the porch light, hoping to find a solution to the strange things that were happening. But each time, I found nothing but the silence of my yard, only empty space and an oppressive atmosphere. Everything seemed to stop in silence, as if the whole world around was holding its breath. In the following days, I almost forgot the appearance of that strange figure. But a small part of me is still afraid. And then, about a week later, I was awakened late one night. This time, it wasn't the sound of footsteps. Not familiar noises. It's a different sound. The sound is like claws or fingernails scratching on wood. My whole body cowered, my skin prickling with fear. At that moment, I knew that something was waiting for me, and it wasn't far away. My mouth immediately went dry. I tried to reach out to find the flashlight on the nightstand, but my shaking hand caused the flashlight to fall to the floor, making a soft noise in the dark night. A sudden feeling of fear surrounded me. At this moment, I could only hear my breathing, heavy and clearly echoing in the quiet space. I struggled to turn on the flashlight, a narrow beam of light piercing the thick darkness of my bedroom. Every step I took was slow and careful, as if each step was a confrontation with the very fear that was gnawing at my mind. That scratching sound, at first so clear and scary, was now gone. I slowly moved to the door of the room, my hand tightly holding the light switch, my mind chaotic with all kinds of unclear thoughts. Even though there was nothing but darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something waiting for me out there. Raising my hand to open the door, I prepared to face whatever was waiting for me. But when the door opened, the air was still cold and nothing had changed. The wooden planks were still sturdy, there was no sign of intrusion, no sign of any creatures, but the air outside, it was heavy, stuffy, as if something invisible was enveloping me. This feeling reminds me of stories in which the main character always feels like there is a certain gaze watching them. It sounds really crazy, but at this moment, I can't think of any other way to describe how I feel. I could have sworn I was being watched, and the feeling was coming from somewhere very close. A figure behind the fence, hidden in the shadows, just waiting for an opportunity. My heart ached. I can't act calm anymore. The next morning, with strong determination, I tried to convince myself that everything was just an imagination. I walked around the yard looking for some trace, anything that could explain this fear. A shoe print, an animal print, or even something so I could give this horror a name. And I found it. Faint marks on the ground, leading from the sidewalk to the porch. They looked very strange, unlike any tracks I had ever seen. The marks were long and slender, but not to the point where they could be said to be the marks of a large boot. Those tracks ran close to the porch, then disappeared between the wooden planks, as if the visitor had lifted his feet off the ground. My mind started spinning. I thought to myself, maybe the light had confused me, maybe these traces were just a coincidence. But deep in my soul, I knew that my rational explanations were gradually disappearing, no longer effective. That night, my sleep became a distant dream. Instead of falling asleep like before, I was wide awake, my ears straining to listen to every sound. Creaking sounds of boards, light pops, or strange groaning sounds in the house. Each of those sounds startled me, making me unable to feel at ease. Even the space outside seems to have become too quiet and unusually quiet. It was not a comfortable silence at all, but a terrifying silence, as if everything was stopping, waiting for something terrible. Sometimes I get up and look through the curtains, scanning the yard for any movement. The streetlights began to flicker, and I couldn't help but feel that the light was reflecting things that I couldn't see clearly. The shadows in the yard changed, disappearing and appearing, as if they were playing hide and seek with me. But I couldn't grab them, they were always out of my sight. And then one of those nights, I saw it. A short figure, as if crouching near a bush. My throat was tight, my heart was racing, and I could barely breathe. I couldn't understand why I saw it, but I was sure I wasn't mistaken. I squinted, trying to find some detail, but all I saw was a dark, indistinct shape, like a twisted branch or a strange, slithering creature. The more I looked, the more I felt it was watching me. An intense feeling, as if it knew everything about me. My mind kept screaming, telling me to stay back, turn off the lights, and run, but I couldn't move. Cold sweat broke out, and my feet felt frozen in place. Everything inside me seemed to stagnate, only fear kept growing. It felt like hours passed before the figure finally receded into the darkness. As it disappeared, I felt my muscles gradually relax, but only then was the tension within me released. Uncontrollable tremors began to spread throughout my body. When dawn broke, I was exhausted both physically and mentally. I don't know if I'm still awake or not. Are these scenes real, or just hallucinations caused by stress? Maybe I'm having an unhealthy obsession with an intruder, someone who gets into the house at night. But even that rational thought felt empty, because deep down, I knew there was something more going on. The sudden end of footprints, the sound of scratching on the porch, and the unusual presence looming beyond the fence, this was more than the actions of a mere intruder. Something was following me, but I couldn't tell what it was. I tried to find a way to share what was going on with a neighbor. I trembled and hesitated as I told the story of hearing strange sounds at night. My neighbor looked half worried, half confused, and thought it might just be the sound of a raccoon. I just nodded politely, but I didn't believe it. Even when I recounted the strange things that had happened, my voice faltered, as if I was trying to convince myself that there was nothing scary. The strange feeling of the situation made me sound like I was grasping at straws, and unable to convince anyone. Still, I secretly hoped that talking to someone else would help me feel better. But on the contrary, it only accentuated my loneliness when faced with the inexplicable. The following nights passed with repetition of the dreaded routine. The feeling of heavy silence and extreme tension made me unable to relax for even a second. It seemed like there was something always there, watching over me, always present even though I couldn't see it clearly. And then, one evening, I heard that scratching sound again, but this time the sound was even more intense, as if something was trying to get under the wooden planks. The feeling of dread rose, my skin prickled as the sound became clearer than ever. I didn't dare rush out the door to check, but just stood still in the house, pressing my ear against the wall, trying to hear what the creature was doing outside. I felt gentle vibrations under my feet, vibrations spreading throughout the floor. A feeling of panic began to spread inside me, making it impossible for me to breathe. My breathing became rapid, my throat was dry, and my mouth tasted like copper from biting my lips. I thought about calling the police, but how would I explain it? Say something invisible is crawling around my porch at night? That sounds silly. Finally, after a long time, the scratching sound stopped. An hour may have passed, or it may have been just a few minutes. In my agitated state, I couldn't tell exactly. But when I dared to open the door, everything remained the same: darkness, silence, emptiness. The beam of my flashlight scanned the wooden panels in the yard, and I discovered deep gouges, clear marks that had never appeared before. They looked like claw marks, each about an inch or two long, deeply embedded in the wood, as if something strong had clawed at them. At that moment, my terror rose to its peak. As I looked into the darkness, I noticed movement near the bushes. That figure has returned. A blur of black in the darkness, barely noticeable, but not making any sound. There was no apparent movement, except for a subtle shift, indicating it was turning to look at me. The feeling of extreme fear made me slam the door, my heart sank. I stood there dumbfounded for a moment at the entrance, my hand clutching the doorknob, sweat drenching my forehead. After that, I hastily locked the door, but that didn't bring me any comfort. I turned on all the lights in the house, hoping to dispel the darkness. The light from the living room shined on the wall, and I saw more clearly than ever how alone I really was. My mind was spinning, chaotic thoughts kept coming back, mixed with fear and inexplicability. Should I leave? Should I stay up all night? Should I try to face it? Sleep becomes impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silhouette, as if it was standing there right behind my eyelids. I felt ghostly claws scratching at my consciousness, as if it was entering my mind. I imagined the wood under my feet would crack, and something would crawl underneath. My reason began to crumble, giving way to a primal, uncontrollable fear. Every sound startled me, every shadow became a potential threat. I have never felt so vulnerable in my own home. Desperate, I spent the next day reinforcing the awning, knocking down any loose boards, and I even spread a light layer of flour dust on the steps, hoping there would be clearer footprints if this thing returned. My nerves were on edge the entire time, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, certain that I would see that vague figure lurking across the street. The weak sunlight shined on my skin, but it could not dispel the fear embedded deep in my bones. And night falls again, like an endless loop. I sat by the window, turned off the light, trying to stay calm to observe. The flower on the porch shines dimly under the porch light. Around midnight, the boards creaked again. My lungs felt like they were constricted. It happened again. But this time, I refused to rush out the door. Instead, I stood behind the curtain and watched. The creaking sound moved slowly across the porch, as if something was secretly moving, stalking every step. Then I heard that itchy scratching sound again. The sound echoed in my ears, over and over again, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. That sound rang in my ears, making my breathing become intermittent and shallow. After a moment, the movement suddenly stopped, and an ominous silence fell. That feeling made me unable to move. I forced myself to look out the window, my heart pounding, convinced that I would see footprints on the flower. But what I saw made my stomach turn. There were indeed footprints, but they were elongated, almost animal-like, weaving across the porch. These marks were unlike any I had ever seen, and that made me feel even more scared. Those footprints walked for a while, then suddenly ended. No steps forward, no steps back. They just stopped between the boards, as if the creature had disappeared instantly. A cold feeling of fear spread throughout my body. My vision blurred at the edges, and my hands shook uncontrollably. I feel like I'm standing precariously on the edge of reality, not knowing what is real and what is just an illusion. There is no reasonable explanation for how something could disappear into thin air like that. My mind reeled with terrible possibilities. Is this entity bound by the laws of nature? Could it come and go at will, taunt me, make me a playful prey? I can't bear it anymore. Mustering up my courage, I grabbed my camera and tiptoed out onto the porch. The boards groaned under my footsteps, echoing the sounds that had tormented me all night long. My legs wobbled, and it took all my willpower to hold on. I took a few pictures of the fresh footprints and claw marks. I want proof that I'm not insane. In the faint circle of porch light, I could see the flower shuffling, as if the last footprints belonging to some ghostly presence had vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the bushes rustled, louder this time, and I turned around. That's when I saw it, the shadow standing just outside the railing, half hidden behind the leaves. It was taller than I thought, its limbs were elongated, or maybe it was a cloak. My throat constricted. My legs screamed at me to run, but I remained still, frozen, unable to move. I stood there, motionless, in terrifying silence. The shadow still didn't move, just peeking out from behind the foliage, seemingly watching me, waiting. I could feel the coldness coming from it, as if the space around me was slowly freezing. All my feelings seemed numb, and my mind still couldn't comprehend what was happening. I couldn't say a word. At this moment, I just wanted to run away, leave this place, but my feet felt like they were tied to the ground. A deep fear spread through me, but then, in that moment, I realized something strange. The feeling of being observed, followed, is not a strange thing to me. This isn't the first time I've felt this way. This fear, like a series of loops, goes on and on. Then I suddenly remembered a saying I once heard: our greatest fear is not death, but the lack of control. I've lived too long in a cycle of fear, too long searching for answers to the unexplainable. Maybe what I faced wasn't a creature, but the fears in my heart. They had no form, no face, but they made me feel as if they were weighing down my every step. At that moment, I realized something strange. The shadow in front of my eyes, which I was always afraid of and tried to avoid, suddenly wasn't scary anymore. Even though it still stood there, just a vague shape in the darkness, my sense of fear gradually disappeared. Maybe I spend too much time looking for explanations for the incomprehensible, instead of simply facing them and letting them be. For the first time in many nights, I felt a strange peace. I don't need to run away anymore. No need to worry about that shadow. Because I know that everything I'm feeling is just a part of life, a part of my mind. And when I let go of fear, that shadow was no longer scary. I turned around and walked inside the house. The dark night is still there, but I have changed. The shadow in the yard still stood there quietly, but I no longer felt the threat. I learned something important: fear can only take over if we let it. And when we learn to acknowledge it, to face it without running away, we will see that it has no power over us. I turned off the lights and closed the door, this time not out of fear but because I knew I was no longer alone with those fears. Because I have learned to accept them, to let them exist as a part of life, without letting them control me. And in that moment, I felt freer than ever. My story ends here, but the lesson about facing fear, not letting it rule your life, will stay with me forever. Fear is not an enemy, but a companion that helps us grow and realize that peace only comes when we let go.